Pastoral appeal. Paul has built this church in Galatia. He has seen the powerful work of the Holy Spirit manifested there and the gospel reaching the Gentiles, but something went wrong.
After Paul building a theological, sophisticated structure of his argument in defense of what he preached in Galatia the first time he went there, in this lesson we read about an appeal that Paul makes to the Galatians. What is it about? Let's hear it.
Galatians 4:12. Friends, I beg you, become as I am, as I also have become, as you are.
First and foremost, let's remind ourselves that the Galatians were people that Paul loved dearly. He worked hard to bring them to Christ so that they can have life free of sin and condemnation. He started with begging them to hear his wholehearted appeal. He begged them to be like he is, relying on what Jesus has done for him, not the works of the law. The Galatians had no issues with secularity or issues with sinful practices like the Corinthians had. However, the basis of their spirituality relied on empty vessels.
You can feel and hear Paul's heart in these verses in Galatians from 4:12 to 20. It's painful because he sees everything that he had worked for in danger to perish. The gospel is being distorted and in jeopardy.
Somehow the Galatians have changed. In what way? Paul says that when he went to Galatia for the first time, he has become as they are, his own words. It was the only way he can reach out to them, the only way they could and they would understand the gospel he was bringing. Only if he managed to understand the context of their reality, the context of their life, reach out was possible. Now they wanted to close themselves into a perfectionism, in the works of the law type of a worship, which was leading them to a closed society type of a religion. And furthermore, evolving into a judgmental people approach. How was that useful for the spreading of the gospel? How was that being a believer and follower of Christ? I beg you, said Paul, be like I am.
This is very interesting. Paul doesn't ask them to do as he does. He asks for this in different places and circumstances, but here his main point is not about doing, it's about being. Be like I am. The most precious for Paul is his experience as Christian, his experience with Christ, what Christ has done for him. In front of Herod Agrippa, talking to him, Paul said, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become such as I am, except for these chains. Paul counted everything else as rubbish because of the surpassing wonder of Christ. This is how he wants us to be like him. It's about being.
Paul gets also a little bit sentimental when he reminds the members of the Galatian church how did they embrace him the first time he went there, to the point that as he was an angel for them. And not only that, but as he was Jesus Christ himself. Now something had changed. There was a then and there was now. And in verse 15, Paul asks the Galatians, where is your sense of happiness now, Galatians? They have lost that too. Sounds familiar? Law, worship religion, works of the law religion sucks the happiness out of our spiritual experience. And I don't like that.
Have we seen this in our churches? Paul was sick. He was probably not supposed to be in Galatia. The Galatians had all the reason to ignore him and not to like him. But they were so attracted by the message of the cross that they treated him as Jesus himself. Their hearts were open then. Now that they have supposedly developed, things have changed. Their hearts are different. What is this paradox? This is what focusing on obedience does. It sucks out the life of spirituality.
Paul ends the chapter by expressing his deep emotional desire. I wish, he says, I could be with you now, Galatians, making this whole issue much more personal for him. And he explains why. because I am perplexed about you. And I wonder, how would Paul find me today if he were to meet with me? Is he going to see a happy Christian? Or is he going to be perplexed by me? Is his spirit going to be disturbed by what he sees? How about you?
It's all about care and love for people. It's being what Christ is for us. Paul is not done. The next lesson is about the two covenants.